It's no secret that there are tons of mods in GTA 5, and one of them is the no water mod or dry sea mod. This mod has been widely used by players to explore a lot of things in the ocean. However, in today's video, the idea is not to explore the ocean with the no water mod, but rather to run some tests in the game on certain missions where we have to go through the ocean or do something underwater to see what happens, check if the game crashes or if there are any issues, see if we can complete the missions in a different way and how these missions turn out. So if you know this channel, go ahead and drop a like right at the going to test with the triathlon, because in the triathlon we have to run, bike and swim, and this one starts with swimming. Actually, I think all the characters start by swimming. So I started with Michael to see what would happen, to check if the characters would swim like they were flying, because sometimes weird bugs happen, you'll see in this video. But no, actually they all start running instead. However, they get stuck in the corals. After spending some time in the corals, they start running back and forth and things start looking a bit weird. Then they eventually unbug themselves, get out of the corals and manage to run normally in the open areas. But if you're in a spot with a lot of vegetation, it becomes almost impossible for the NPCs to reach you. It's really crazy. In Daddy's Little Girl, for those who don't remember, in this mission we ride bikes to the Los Santos Pier with Jimmy. We just bike along the beach area, and then Jimmy snitches on Tracy, saying she's over there dancing and shaking it for some weirdos who work in the porn industry, etc. After that, we end up getting into a fight in the middle of the yacht with the guys, and then we have to escape on a jet ski. The guys chase us, and well, it's the whole mess that anyone who has finished GTA 5 already knows. With that in mind, I activated the dry sea mod and tried to complete this mission. The first thing that really caught my attention was that the yacht was literally floating. I thought it would be down underwater, like I thought it would be at the bottom in what would now be the surface level, not where it would be as if there was still water in the game, because well, there really isn't any water. So yeah, the yacht was actually flying. The first thing I did was follow the usual mission routine, which is to run and jump down, but when I jumped, instead of diving head first, he just jumped, didn't have time to open the parachute, and instantly died. After that, I grabbed that little bike and tried riding it, but when I got near the yacht, I realized I wasn't going to be able to climb onto it since it was literally flying. So I went over to the beach, quickly used the helicopter cheat, and flew over to the yacht. When I got to the helicopter, I had to be really stealthy so I wouldn't alert the people on the boat, because if you alert them, the mission fails. I went in super carefully, landed right in front of Tracy, and the cutscene didn't trigger. I think the mission kind of bugs out if you remove the water. So what did I do? I killed myself 3 times to see if I could at least skip the part where the cutscene should happen and check what would come next when the guys were supposed to chase me on jet skis. Normally Michael would get on the jet ski first and then the guys would come after me, so I wanted to see what would happen in that part. Then, after I pressed to skip, the game just stopped loading. I even restarted this mission 3 more times to try again, but I realized that it always crashes at this point, so there's really nothing to do. I gave up and moved on to the next one. Let's move on to the Merryweather heist. In the version where you go by helicopter and submarine, the mission becomes basically unplayable, so there's no point in showing that here. Now in the freighter version, things get more interesting when Michael arrives to board the ship. He reaches the boat with no water at all, but just like the yacht, the ship is also floating. The cutscenes work normally, unlike the other mission that crashed midway. After taking out all the guards on board, when Michael is supposed to jump into the water to hide underwater, he jumps and immediately dies. So if you're not using the invincibility mod, the mission will fail instantly. But that's not really a problem. You can just skip that part, and it will move on to the ship explosion sequence. That part is pretty cool because even without the ocean water, the water effects still happen. When the containers fall off the ship, they look like they're floating, and there are still some water effects even though there's no actual water. You can search for the sonar signal easily since you can just run between the containers without failing the mission. After reaching the marked location and picking up the missing item, the game switches to Trevor, but at this point you can only complete the mission using the no clip mod because the submarine won't move on land. It only works if there's water. Still, overall it was a pretty cool experiment. Now moving on to one that I found a bit more interesting. This one I actually liked more. The mission Minor Turbulence, which is the one where we end up stealing that giant plane in the game. At the end of this mission, for those who don't remember, the plane crashes into the Alamo Sea, and since we're using the dry sea mod, I wanted to see how it would smash down there. Normally the plane stays wrecked at the bottom in a pretty cool way. That's when I noticed that Rockstar did some, I was going to say bad work, but honestly it's not lazy work. They just did their job as expected because they probably never imagined someone would mess around with this using the dry sea mod. Basically when the plane crashes, it explodes and completely disappears, just vanishes. Then a different already wrecked plane spawns right next to it. I used to think that the plane we see crashing was the same one that ends up broken at the bottom, But no, that's not what happens. It falls, disappears, and then a separate, pre-damaged plane appears in its place, the same one where you can pick up weapons and everything else down there. Another mission that worked really well with the dry sea mod, this one I liked because it didn't bug out and you can actually finish it in a different way, is the mission Hood Safari. In this mission, there's that part where we have to grab the jet skis, and man, this one gets some really crazy bugs. When you go to pick up the jet skis, if you step off yours, even just for a moment after the cutscene ends, and for example use a cheat code to spawn a motorcycle instead, you can actually do the chase sequence on a bike. The weirdest part is that the other characters are pre-programmed to follow the same path, even though there's no water. So while you're riding your motorcycle below, you can see them floating above as if they're still on jet skis. It's super bizarre but also really funny. Another alternative for this mission is to keep switching characters while on the jet ski. When you switch characters, the game automatically sends them to a specific coordinate, making them fly, so you can alternate between Trevor and Franklin, switching back and forth, and you'll basically be flying on the jet ski the entire time. Every time you switch, you'll fly up and then drop back down over and over again. But in the end, you can still complete the mission just fine without failing or anything. In the mission Derailed, I felt kind of cheated. Since I had activated the dry sea mod, I figured there wouldn't be any water left anywhere. But in the mission, you're not actually in the ocean. You're kind of in a small river. So just that tiny section of the mission still has water, while the rest doesn't. A little further ahead and a little behind, there's no water at all. Once you pass that part, the mission basically becomes unplayable. Before you even reach the stream and after you leave it, you can't progress with the boat. The boat just falls and won't move, and you can't get out and walk like we did in Hood Safari, which makes it pretty much impossible to finish this mission with the dry sea mod. Now, the one I found the coolest was the Humane Labs mission. For this mission, I had to do something pretty bizarre. If you start the mission directly with no water, it instantly fails. It just won't run. And if you skip the intro, the game jumps straight past the fence. But what I really wanted to see was what would happen to Steve Haynes and David Norton when they had to get off the boat. Would they fall straight down? Would they start floating and swimming in midair? Would the mission fail? Or would they just keep running? I had no idea and I wanted to find out. So I started the mission with the water enabled, went all the way to the spot where they get off the boat, and only then did I remove the water. But when you remove all the water at once, Steve Haynes and David Norton just drop straight down and die instantly. So I had to keep toggling the water on and off, letting them fall gradually until they were just about to reach the ground. Then at the right moment, I removed the water completely. And when I finally got it to work, after trying about 4 times, it was time to run to the gate. Either Steve Haynes or David Norton bugged out for a second, so I gave him a little push, and then we all ran toward the gate. Man, it was such a trip. The whole thing felt so weird. When we got to the gate, I wasn't sure how it would play out, but it actually worked. That part of the mission plays as if there's still water. Michael floats there with the blowtorch and everything. Then, only after the cutscene ends does it go back to being dry and the characters can start running normally. Once they're inside, they eventually get stuck at the turbines. There are 3 turbines along the way under the Humane Labs facility. The trick to getting past them is to jump and press the circle button, because if Michael hits one and falls down, you can just keep running. The game will automatically respawn Dave and Steve Haynes further ahead, and the mission continues normally once you're almost at the lab. Then, out of nowhere, the water reappears, and you suddenly swim up through the water inside Humane Labs. So, there's no water in the ocean, but inside the Humane Labs, there is. You come running from the dry area and suddenly start floating up through the water, along with the other characters, all the way to the top. Man, it's such a trippy thing. While I was running these tests, my game crashed about 4 times. It just closed out of nowhere. I kept recording and testing multiple times to check every possibility, seeing what worked and what didn't. This mod is just one of the many incredible curiosities I've been bringing to you, and not only that, there are even more mind-blowing ones like how Denise, Franklin's aunt, was supposed to have a bigger connection with the gangs, as hinted in the GTA 5 trailer. Plus, there are tons of shocking details you probably never even noticed. Click on the video indicated by the arrow and you'll be able to check it all out. You won't regret it. And that's for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care and bye.